Okay, so I want to give a clear answer on which ones to get for what scenarios, because it is scenarios that's going to be important. If you have a Samsung phone, at like a one that has DeX mode built to it, it's I believe what the S21 and higher has by automatic. I think the S20 might also be able to support this feature, but with a cable that you buy from Huion, you can use this in DeX mode, and it's going to give you a really good experience. You can actually see the hover of the pen cursor. So for Android, specifically a Samsung phone, this is going to be great. For Android, on any other device that just mirrors the display onto the screen, the Artist 12, the one underneath here, is going to be the better option. So the Huion Kamvas, specifically for Samsung Galaxy phones, the Artist 12 from XP Pen second generation, for any other Android phone. If you are on Windows, considering the color accuracy is a bit better here, you get a little bit bigger display. You can color calibrate this on Windows. I think the Artist 12 is a better buy for Windows, as long as you don't use tilt that much. If you are on Mac OS, the Huion Kamvas 12 is going to be a better option here. And that has to do with the color accuracy. I just brought up that the Artist 12 has better color accuracy, and you can configure it on Windows, but you can only configure that color accuracy on Windows. That's the little um, major point here. With the Kamvas 12, you have built-in like screens, OSDs, to control the backlight, the brightness, the contrast, the gamma, the red, blue, green, the sharpness, the rotation of the screen. You can do this all inside of the panels inside of this actual display. You don't need drivers specific to an OS to configure the color accuracy. So I really, really like it for that. So if you're on Linux, if you're on Mac OS, if you're on Android, if you're on Chrome OS, you can configure the color accuracy at least with the Kamvas 12, whereas with XP Pen's Artist 12, you're only limited to Windows, and this can do it on any platform because it's integrated into the display. Tilt is another thing here. So I am not a fan of the tilt support in the X3 Elite. I've talked about this time and time and again. The barrel design is not good enough to where if you try and you have too much of a tilt, the nib will not have direct contact as it needs to actually be able to activate. Between the barrel design and a really thin nib here, the problem with that is that it just can't hit that contact point. More to the point, the tilt starts immediately you move any direction here. So if you're somebody that likes it like a much steeper tilt, it will no longer register at like, I don't know, half of what I would normally even consider to start to tilt. Whereas with the PW 5 or 517, yeah, 517, its tilt doesn't start to about 10 degrees. So you have a little bit to work with. And then when you have a high degree tilt on it, it still is able to make contact with the actual display, and it will still be able to have numbers when you go to the far extremes because it has that offset tilt. It doesn't start at 0 here, it starts at 0 like slightly over, and then when you're shading something more akin to shading with a pencil, it feels much more natural, whereas with the X3 Elite, you're going to have to really choke up on it and change how you shade traditionally on this digital pen display. So that's the only things that I will mention here that I think that are most important to take away. I'll talk about everything else, including the Android specific things. Okay, so I wanted to show line quality, but this is going to be subjective because I can't really get a one-to-one on this. But you'll see that the canvas looks like absolutely straight, and the artist is struggling a little bit. So, and this was using a straight edge, and I just went in diagonal line on both of these, and then I hand drew these. And this is where it got a little interesting. So this one here is from the Kamvas 12. So let's put K here. Um, and it's particularly straighter than the one that is coming from the artist. I'll put an A here. I'm finding that the nib diameter is affecting this. How much of the surface of the felt nib do I have to contact to give me a lot more stability when I am drawing? And because the X3 Elite Pen has a fairly narrow nib compared to the nib on the PW 517 for the canvas, I feel like I just have more stability to work with. And when I wear it down, particularly on one side, which is what you'll see there, I just have a lot more of that nib in contact. So it's less fiddly when I am having a larger kind of surface area to touch because of the nib being thicker. Let's talk pens. Obviously with the Artist 12, you're getting the X3 Elite here. It's an all plastic build. I prefer plastic, it's easier to maintain over time. You're not getting a loose grip from using too much friction or something like that. The only gotcha is with these X3 Elite pens, the nib could have a bit more wobble than expected. And I think this is a manufacturing thing specifically, because when it says plus or minus 0.5 millimeters, that means it could be plus or minus 0.5 millimeters. This one is on the worse end of these pens for that spectrum. So it could be at the very tail end of 0.5 millimeter difference. Because I'm going to show you this one here. This is from the Kamvas 12 to 5 PW 517, and this has 0 nib wobble. The only wobble that you see there is from the felt actually flexing. So that's different than this having that initial deflection zone and then also moving in between the barrel itself. And I think that's maybe accounting for it, along with the more surface to work on top of the actual tip as you wear it down. That causes a lot better stability in the line quality that I was showing. And I'm going to put more to that tolerance, because this is the 5W or 550S, the PW 550S, that you can also use on the Kamvas 12. You can't use the secondary pen on the Artist 12 other than the X3 Elite Plus, which is the exact same pen. All it has is an eraser. So you're not getting any better quality pens. This is Pentec 3.0 from Huion. This is their newer pens is Pentec 3.0 Plus. It's supposed to have a 0.1 millimeter better tolerance, but I'm going to show you this nib here. There's wobble in it. And there's a little bit of deflection, but there's mostly wobble. And this has to go with that tolerance measurement I was talking about. So this is a 0.4 plus or minus millimeter tolerance within the barrel, but your luck is of the draw. I have another pen here. This is like the upgraded X3 Elite pen. This is the X3 Pro pen from XP Pen. This is not available for the Artist pen, but there's very little happening here. There's like 0 movement almost. And this bit here is just from the actual nib kind of flexing inside the barrel. So like I said, it's gonna be luck of the draw. I got lucky with this pen here, or not this pen, the PW 517 pen and its tolerances. And hopefully it will stay like this over time. And this will be my more preferred pen because it has a much better point of contact with the felt tips. In combination with the felt tips, I definitely recommend them if you're really, really caring about the nib stability, because they're wonky in shape. They are not consistent. And that inconsistency helps with the nib kind of, you know, wobbling in there, because sometimes they're going to be a little thicker than these standard black nibs that you see inside here as well. They're not as uniformed as the black nibs. So I think felt nibs would be great options if you really care about that, but I can't say which one's better or worse just based off like the deflection and nib wobble and all this other stuff, because all these pens are different when they're manufactured based on the batches and groups and everything else. Okay, with the Huion Kamvas 12, there are 2 Android modes it could fall into. If it's the good Android mode I'm going to show here, yes, absolutely get this. But I think this is just limited to DeX mode on Android via a Samsung phone. I think if you have any other phone that does not go into DeX mode, you're going to get the opposite, which I can throw this into. So right now, what I'm showing here is, obviously I can't pinch or zoom anything here, but the phone itself can act as a trackpad. And so I can zoom in as much as I want here, and I can show how far offset my cursor would be. But I have a hover cursor. So let me go ahead and zoom in real quick. You can see where my cursor is actually going to land on the screen here. This is very useful. This is what the Artist 12 second generation does not have. And I'm zoomed in a lot with a big brush, not a big brush, but a brush nonetheless. You can kind of see where it at. Now the performance is not great. It's a very laggy, slow experience, but it's still very usable in that context. Where I was thrown for a loop was I was using High Paint, because High Paint lets me configure the buttons on the side here. In IBIS Paint X, it cannot recognize this as a device to use. So if I go ahead and go back to the home screen here, which I can actually interact with everything here, I get my cursor still and everything else. But if I open up High Paint specifically, it'll prompt me saying, hey, do you want to connect this to the device? And so when I do that, then the pen mode goes into something that I would say is absolutely unusable. And if your Android device puts your phone into this mode, I'm gonna hit OK here. The cursor in relative to your pen just becomes so weirded out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a new canvas here. And you'll see that the hover, let's see if I can show this here. The hover is so off from where the pen is at. It's nowhere close. Like if I try to draw right now, it's nowhere close to the pen. It's only when I'm drawing like in the absolute middle is the pen even remotely close. And then I can no longer interact with the UI here. I can't close anything. The only way for me to do that is to get out of this mode here and then go ahead and force close, not force close Dex mode, but force close the HiPaint app. And then I have to unplug and replug my device back in. Because if I don't, then I can't get my cursor to work again on this device. So I just want to put some context in this that it could potentially work really, really good, but I think you're going to be limited to Samsung Dex mode at best because I have an LG V30. That's another cable I can connect to my actual device here. And the problem with that is that its cursor is so far off from where the pen is at, just like I had shown. So if you run into that situation where you're just mirroring your display onto this pen display, I don't think you're going to have a very usable experience. The Artist 12 is a very different picture, which I will show. Okay, this is the Artist 12 second generation from XP Pen and its implementation. So I do not have hover, but I can still interact with everything. The cursor position is fairly accurate. It's not until you get to the outer, 2 inches does it become a little bit of an offset of a problem. But I can go into HiPaint and I can go ahead, well, close the ad. Do new canvas. And I can go ahead and draw now. Now I don't have a cursor at all. It's not until I make a touchdown do I actually see the cursor, but it's fairly accurate. It's accurate enough to where the hover isn't that big of a deal. And so when I'm on the edging, it's still fairly close than when I'm in the center here. And so if I go ahead and zoom in ever so much and even go at a tilt, it's still where the nib is at. Because it's pretty good for accuracy. So I think this is still a usable situation. It just, I was working on a piece that I was trying to get like super precise erasing and line art. And it was becoming a bit frustrating because I couldn't see where the nib was actually going to land. And you have to zoom in a lot and a lot and a lot more. And I just didn't like that part of it. So that's the only thing there. Other than that, it's still pretty good Android implementation. With the V30 I had mentioned, that actually works just fine. It has the same cursor accuracy and everything else. So I feel like this is a better Android experience-ish. But if you have Samsung Dex specifically, the Kamvas 12 is going to be a better option here because that gives you the good accuracy. You just, when you're using HiPaint, don't connect your device to HiPaint. Just say cancel or no, whatever that dialog was. So I wanted to show the colors on these screens. I don't know if this is a good way or not, but these are both rated at 200 nits. The Kamvas 12 from Huion has an 89-degree viewing angle. The XP Pen has a 179-degree viewing angle. The colors I see at every angle will technically be the same versus when I'm looking straight ahead, but the colors on the Huion Kamvas 12 will shift as you're changing the angles. But I don't think that matters too much. You're going to be looking at these screens head on anyways because you're drawing on top of them. You're not using them as a reference monitor. And so I think the fact that this does a pretty good job at color adjustments that you can handle. Like this is on Mac OS right now, so I actually have no way to color calibrate this. Whatever you're seeing here is whatever's out of the box at 100% brightness. These are both 100% brightness, 200 nits. The cell phone, I believe, is 1,000 nits, maybe even more. But yeah, color accuracy is very different between all of these. And I have a color deficiency specifically with green, so I can't really tell that screen, but I'm going to go ahead and try to play all of these all at once so you can see all the different colors these will show between them.